God of War, Spider-Man, Detroit Become Human. No, this isn't a rerun. This really was the PlayStation E3 2017 lineup. How's it going, everybody? This is Colin Tanner from VideoGamesAreDumb.com, here to close out our third day of E3 2017 coverage, talking all about the PlayStation press conference. And yes, it was a bit of a disappointment. It's safe to say Sony has created a reputation around major surprises at E3, from the $399 PlayStation 4 to the announcement of Shenmue 3, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, as well as Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, God of War. Each year they bring something new and exciting. But that didn't happen this year. In fact, most of the games we had previously seen at other E3s, however, we finally got some sort of a timetable for when they would come out. But before we get to that, we need to talk about the pre-show. They had a pre-show for the PlayStation conference, and there were some major announcements there, including Undertale, one of the best PC games of 2015, is coming to the PlayStation 4 and Vita. This is one of the best games of all time. I love Undertale, but let me tell you, if you're like, wow, that's a high recommendation, I want to go Google this, please do not. The fan base is insane, and they like to tell you what you should do on your first playthrough, and they like to spoil the ending. Do not Google Undertale. Buy it when it comes out. You'll thank me later. Also, it was announced that the city building game Tropico 6 is coming to the PlayStation 4 in 2018. Obviously, Tropico 5 was released on the PlayStation 4 back in 2015, I want to say. Really fun games that are pretty good on the PlayStation 4. And also, Ni no Kuni 2 is coming to the PlayStation 4 on November 10th. I'm not sure if that had a release date before, but we finally have it now, November 10th, for the JRPG with the Studio Ghibli art style, Ni no Kuni 2. But yes, the show finally started in earnest, and we saw Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, which of course is the spin-off from Uncharted, the standalone DLC with Chloe and Nadine, the two women from Uncharted 4. They are on their own adventure where they are hunting down some sort of an ancient relic, solving puzzles, jumping on cliff sides, and apparently fighting or working for or something this guy with a mustache and a handgun. Why don't I know? Wasn't I paying attention during the trailer? I mean, what kind of recap is this? No. Here's the thing. For whatever reason, this press conference had a ton of technical issues when it started out. I was watching the official PlayStation Twitch stream, and the left and right channel, if you look at 5.1 surround sound, you have your left and right channel. This is where you get most of your information from. And then you have the 5.1, the ones that are behind you, and maybe a subwoofer. That's where you get that sort of texture that's added to your left and right channel. Only the texture channels were open, the left and right channels were not on, so everything sounded like it was going through a tunnel. People on Twitter were freaking out. That being said, the footage looked pretty cool. It looks like Chloe and Nadine are going to do lots of moves where they team up, such as, I think at one point Chloe jumped on a cliff, and then Nadine jumped also at the cliff, but attached to Nadine's leg. So something along the lines of what you saw in Uncharted 2 or The Last of Us, lots of teaming up in parkour. It looked good altogether, and we didn't get a release date, but it will be coming later this year. I think they already announced the release date, so that's not a big deal. Maybe it's August? I think it's August. They didn't have it at the show. Anyway, so they went on to the next trailer, which was for Horizon Zero Dawn, The Frozen Wilds, a DLC for Horizon Zero Dawn. It looks like they're going through some sort of an ice age. It was mostly about dialogue. They didn't show any action in the game. Problem is, no one could hear that dialogue at all. I assume the people in the building could, but people watching through a live stream, there was nothing. I mean, I was watching the Twitch chat, and they're like, what's wrong? Why can't I hear what they're saying? So that was a major problem that actually continued through until the early parts of the next trailer. But by the way, yes, always cool to get more DLC for a great game. And I love Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm definitely going to be checking out the Frozen Wilds. I love the story of that game. Really excited to get back in. But anyway, so they had the next trailer for Days End. This is a game that was announced last year. It was the zombie game with the motorcycle. I believe it was called something else at one point, but they changed it to Days End. In the trailer, you saw the protagonist on his motorcycle being informed that there were people missing from the camp. There were these wounded people that were walking towards the camp, and the guy's like, can you go and find them? And he's like, sure, all right, fine, I will. But he's got a bit of an attitude. So he's driving down the road. He's seeing injured people that are wandering towards the camp. And then finally, he finds a body that's being ripped apart by wolves. And he's like, uh-oh, I better get out of here. So he's driving away. The wolves start chasing after him, and it looks like they're slightly mutated because they can keep up with their motorcycle, which is unusual to say the least. So in slow motion, he shoots one of the wolves in the head, but there's a tripwire that knocks him off his bike. 2 men attack him, and in a sort of quick time event, he stabs one in the gut repeatedly and strangles another one with some rope. Finally, he goes to the forest, and this is where you really got to see how good the graphics are for this game. I think it's safe to say that Days End last year did not look particularly great. Like graphically, it looked kind of mushy and just sort of off. It looks as good as Horizon Zero Dawn, at least it did in the stream. Like the way that the light was peering through the foliage and adapting to all the different tree branches, just the way that the grass looked, just gorgeous. He was actually wandering around and looked down at a bridge and saw a bunch of zombies. I'm talking hundreds of zombies that were all moving at once with unique animations. It was stunning. Finally, he discovers a campsite, and he sneaks through there, but actually trips along a tin can alarm. Some guy goes and searches for him, so they kill that guy. He grabs a bear trap, puts it down, throws a rock that distracts somebody to go and check it out. That guy steps into the bear trap, he starts screaming, so the rest of the gang runs out to see what's going on, and our hero can swing around the back, avoiding all of that business. Finally, he finds the guy that he is looking for, but unfortunately, there's just too many people there, so he uses C4, blows up a wall. All those zombies that were on the bridge, they come pouring in, they start murdering the hell out of everybody. He climbs up the ladder, only to discover that the guy he's trying to rescue has a gun pointed to his head, so he does the natural thing and just, shoots the guy that's holding the gun. So finally they can relax, everything's cool, but no, there is a mutant bear that's covered in barbed wire, and that's when it says Days End. Really good trailer. I would say this is probably the most improved demo we've seen for the entirety of E3. Like Days End last year, I'm like, I don't know. Do I really need a zombie game? And do I really need one that just, looks almost cartoonish? Like it looks incredibly simple. Like it looked like you were just fighting a big thing of zombies. Now they're introducing all these stealth mechanics. They're introducing these destructive environments. The graphics have been greatly improved. It looked like every second you were doing something different, and that was really exciting. Not to mention, just it's so beautiful. It really is. You have to check it out for yourself. I think it's safe to say this year all of the demos were running on PlayStation 4 Pro. I don't think any of these were running on vanilla PlayStations. And because so many of them were first party, obviously they're going to support the Pro. In fact, Shawn Layden took to the stage after it and says, we're so happy that we're here. We are embracing the future. We have 4K and we have VR. And for the rest of the show, he would only acknowledge PlayStation 4 Pro and PlayStation VR. At no point was he saying, oh yes, and of course we have our regular PlayStation. Nope, never at any point. But he's on stage and he says, 2017 has already been awesome because we've had Horizon Zero Dawn, Neo, Resident Evil 7, Persona 5, MLB The Show, and so many more because we already have the power. It's all about the games. And of course he's going to say that. Well, who needs the power? Because obviously Microsoft just announced the most powerful console that has ever existed the night prior. But it's a smart way to push back against Microsoft, saying, look, we've already had a great year. We have the evidence right now. You don't have to wait for the future. It's a smart strategy when it comes to marketing. So he says, let's get back to the trailers, right? So he says the next game has a cult following around the world. It's something really special. We see a guy that's going through a jungle. He has a sword that has basically like teeth at the end of it. It's very, very reminiscent if you've played maybe PlayStation 2 or 3DS games recently. He's going through the jungle. He sees some pterodactyls. There are these bugs that are fluttering around. He's collecting objects along the way to create some sort of camouflage for himself. He spots a T-Rex and he sneaks right past him. The T-Rex can't see him because he's got all this moss that's all over him, but it's sniffing around. It's like, oh, where's this coming from? And finally, it starts chasing after him. He jumps up, he slashes at it, he's running through, he's setting up traps along the way, he's having rock slides crush the T-Rex, it's having vines that are catching the T-Rex so he can slash more and more and more. Finally, another monster swoops in, and the T-Rex and this giant pterodactyl are out going to war with each other, and it's revealed that Monster Hunter World is coming to the PlayStation 4. That's right. Monster Hunter World is coming to the PlayStation 4. Now, it has been apparently trademarked for multiple systems, if I'm not mistaken, so this is not going to be a Sony exclusive, but I question, because it looked very, very good, is this going to be a Xbox One, PC, PlayStation 4 kind of thing, and then maybe we'll get something separate on the Nintendo Switch, because we already know that Monster Hunter Double Cross is coming to the Nintendo Switch. So is this not going to be there? And if that's the case, I think you're going to see the sales increase in Japan. It's going to happen. Japan has been steadily adapting to the PlayStation 4 as the years have gone on. It is always in the top 4 best-selling consoles in Japan. I really think it has a shot of pushing back against the Nintendo Switch, but I don't know for how long. Maybe it'll be neck and neck, especially when this comes out, because Monster Hunter has been, for many players, I've heard, a little bit stagnant. They want to see that next generation, and I can't say that this really evolved the gameplay in any meaningful way. I mean, it definitely looked like more Monster Hunter, but it was quite beautiful. And it's awfully smart of Capcom to double down on this franchise when they need to have surefire hits. But I'm impressed to see it on an American stage, I guess I could say, is that here at an American stage where Monster Hunter really hasn't kicked off, that shows the amount of confidence that both Capcom and Sony have in this game. Up next, we had a brand new trailer for the remake of Shadow of the Colossus. That is right. Studio Japan and Blue Point Games, the same people that were behind the remaster of Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 3, they're back to make a PlayStation 4 version. It looks basically the same, but man, everything has been smoothed out. It's 60 frames per second. It almost looks like a computer-generated fan trailer. Like something that you would see on on Facebook or Reddit, where it's like, imagine if Sony made this, and you're like, that looks too clean. They would never make that. That's basically what this looked like. It was, it's neat, but it's a little, I don't know. The idea of being like, oh, here's Shadow of the Colossus, it's back. It's an easy thing to turn around, and I get that. And I have total faith in Blue Point Games. They do an excellent job of porting older titles like the Metal Gear Solid collection, or even porting the very first Titanfall to Xbox 360. These guys are experts. But I don't know if I want to play Shadow of the Colossus again. I mean, it's a classic. It really is. But it's one of those games that, it's a classic. I would have preferred to see something maybe a bit more obscure, maybe something that hasn't really received much recognition recently, getting another shot. But instead, we're just going back with PlayStation, with Shadow of the Colossus. Sorry, it's kind of late right now. I'm a little punch drunk. It's fine. It looks cool. I guess if you've never played Shadow of the Colossus, it'll be a treat. But It's a quick project. It's coming in 2018. Next, we had a trailer for Marvel versus Capcom Infinite. We saw Ultron is fighting all the Avengers, but Doctor Strange opens a portal, and now the Capcom characters are teaming up. You see Chun-Li and Captain America fighting against these Ultron robots. It's coming September 18th, and a story demo is out today. But the trailer closed out with a very comedic moment where Dante from Devil May Cry throws Ebony and Ivory, his two signature guns, to Rocket Raccoon, who's happy to have them and ready to use them. Story demo. Awesome, because I'm not sure how sold many people are on this concept. These are two Capcom games at this event, and I think that's really worth pointing out. Where last year Capcom was more associated with the Xbox brand, I think you could say, even though Resident Evil 7 was on multiple stages, they had Dead Rising 4 last year. It looks like they're going for maybe the more popular console instead of the closer relationship here, and saying, hey, we got Monster Hunter here, we got Marvel vs. Capcom. They're trying to be. They were really the only new games, the ones that we didn't see at last year's E3. So that's worth something for Capcom. Next, we had a trailer for Call of Duty World War II. This is when I just straight up left the Twitch stream. The Twitch stream was being hit hard. Everyone in the chat was saying this thing is laggy as hell. I jumped over to YouTube and just watched the GameSpot stream. So I didn't see too much of this World War II trailer. It looked like more Call of Duty, tanks, planes, guns, World War II, Nazis, all that stuff. It looked good. It did. But, not much to say about it. I guess what I'm most surprised about from this conference is that they had a sizable portion of it dedicated to PlayStation VR. They had 3 separate games that they announced, the first being easily the biggest. This might be the biggest announcement from this event was Skyrim VR is coming to PlayStation 4. And it's funny because yesterday at the Bethesda press conference, they announced Fallout 4 VR, or at least they showed it off for the first time. They showed off Doom VR, which is also coming to PlayStation 4, but they did not announce Skyrim VR. This was an exclusive for the Sony stage, and the audience really liked it. It appears that it's using the same motion controls as the Switch version, which we saw last night. And yeah, you know, it looks to be 60 frames per second. It looks good. I'm intrigued. And I'm sure that that will sell plenty of headsets because Skyrim is just evergreen. It is always popular. And, you know, you heard people muttering as soon as they heard, you know, the song of Skyrim. Like, let's stop for a moment. What is the song of Skyrim? Just think about it. See? You already got it in your head. And if you don't, well, just Google it. You'll recognize it. Up next, they had a brand new game from Playful, who is the name of the studio, and Game Trust is publishing it. Game Trust, of course, is the publisher that is from GameStop. That's GameStop's publisher, Game Trust. It was a PlayStation VR game, which is called Star Child. It is a 2D platformer. It looked a little bit like Inside or Limbo, and it was 3D graphics, obviously, because it's going to be in VR, but it was two-dimensional. You move left and right, you know, like a Mario game. And just like avoiding aliens, and then there was like a giant alien, but he pressed a button and activated a giant robot that stopped the giant alien, and then he got in his hand. It was kind of bland. It didn't really give you a taste of what that game was going to be. So just imagine Limbo, but like aliens. That's so demeaning. So there are people that are spending their lives working on that. I'm just like, whatever. Next, we had another game by Supermassive Games, which was kind of exciting. It was a insane asylum in the 1950s. We had some kind of early rock and roll playing on the radio. There were just lots of flashes to men that were like, there you are, and like grabbing the person who's playing in first person because this is a VR game, and a doctor that's like, can you remember what it was like before you got here? I need you to remember. I'm just looking out for you. So it's trying to be like a spooky, insane asylum game. It's called, The Inpatient is what it's called. That's really all you know about it. I think it's kind of cool to have a period piece, if nothing more, in PlayStation VR. Like, you know, VR, I think, too often tries to rely on going to alien worlds. You know, and that's just not very exciting. You know, the things we want to experience most are the things that were real. I really believe that. And being able to go into the 1950s, I think is actually a lot more desirable than, I don't know, shooting an alien in the face in VR, or even going to Skyrim. I think it's just more interesting to go to, you know, Kyoto, Japan, or, you know, Paris, France in the real world in VR, because it feels like you're actually connecting to something. It's an experience that you can already picture in your mind, and then it's becoming reality, rather than going through someone's, you know, creation. But whatever, that's me on my soapbox. The next trailer was for Final Fantasy 15 Monsters of the Deep. It's a fishing game in VR, and it uses the Final Fantasy 15 characters, except there are some monstrous fish that might attack you. And yeah, it's kind of funny that they're making this, but PlayStation VR needs a fishing game, and there was a pretty good, you know, fishing minigame in Final Fantasy 15. Why not bring it together? It's actually kind of rock solid. Apparently that will be out this September. Very cool. The next trailer, Supermassive Games. We just saw them with The Inpatient. They're back again, and we see a group of soldiers in what appears to be an Eastern European city, first-person shooting, kind of like Farpoint, where you actually have to hold the gun up to your face to look through the scope in VR. And they are firing at other soldiers, and it just says Bravo Team. Kind of bland, you know. Once again, it's like, oh, it's a shooting game in VR. There's a lot of those, but I guess this one is supposed to be tactical. But it sure looks a lot like Farpoint, which just came out like a month ago. Ugh. Next up, we had a game called Moss, which stars a tiny little mouse who is running through the forest and trying to find ancient treasure. It looked incredibly adorable. He was running through nature, and there was nice little reflection effects on the pond. It almost looked like Studio Ghibli at one point. Like some of the creatures looked like they were straight out of Princess Mononoke. And so he's entering into the temple and using some sort of like elevator. He's fighting back against crabs using his little sword. But at the very end of the trailer, he's going through a very dimly lit hallway, and a giant snake appears, and then it's called Moss. it's one of those things where I'm looking at it and it's like, that's neat, but why is this VR exactly? And that's kind of that was the last of the VR experiences on the stage. And I couldn't rationalize why any of these games were VR. Like, I understand why Final Fantasy 15 fishing is VR. I get that because it's fishing. Like, okay, fishing game. Sure, those are kind of boring, but it might be more entertaining if it was in VR. I guess that's solving two separate problems, but it's like first-person shooter, okay. Oh, it's like a third-person platformer. All right, but and I'm sure it'll be cool. It'll look cool in the headset. But why exactly are these games VR? What are they offering that I can't get elsewhere? Because I'm looking at these games, I'm like, oh, I could play this without VR. Absolutely. I mean, one of them is Skyrim. You know you can play that without VR. Say what you will about a lot of these evangelists out there. They do have one thing right when it comes to virtual reality, and that's they need to create ideas from the ground up for this platform. It can't just simply be a fill in the blank, but in VR. That's not going to do it any favors. So I don't think anyone walked away thinking, oh, I've got to get that headset, unless they were blown away by Skyrim. And I think once they get the opportunity to test out VR, they might lose some of that enthusiasm, because walking around in VR, that inertia, I keep saying it, motion sickness happens. You do not get used to it. Either it's well programmed. I mean, it's up to the developers to figure out how it works. I played things like Resident Evil 7 where it worked great. I played other things like Farpoint where I'm getting kind of vomity just thinking about it. It's up to the developers. So like I said yesterday, hopefully Bethesda has had this miracle breakthrough to make walking in VR more comfortable. I don't know if they have. I guess we'll find out when that comes out. So that was the end of PlayStation VR. We're finally getting to the PlayStation stuff. But the way they displayed this on the stage was they showed an image of the PlayStation 4 Pro. They did not show the regular PlayStation. So they're sending that message out there. You need to get yourself a PlayStation 4 Pro. And they started off with God of War. It was Kratos and his son, rowing a wooden boat across the water. His son says, "Are you really going to do this?" And Kratos takes out his axe. He throws it into the water, and you see a bunch of animals disperse. His son says, "You say I'm cursed. You think I'm weak because I'm not like you. At least I know the truth." And Kratos kind of squints his eyes and he's like, the truth. Yeah, the truth. He's really thinking about that. Another voice off camera says, "I thought your kind were supposed to be so enlightened, so much better than us." And then another voice says, "The gods of these realms don't take kindly to outsiders." So here's what I'm thinking already. When you hear something like that, and I believe they said this is like a total different Kratos, or however they phrased it, because I'd be really curious to see if, because it's not ancient Greece anymore, it's like a Viking story, but it'd be fascinating if it was the same Kratos from the other games, just somehow dropped in this world. The fact that they say realm specifically, it's like, please tell me that's the original Kratos, because that would make the game a lot more complex. I don't think it is. Anyway, we get to see some of the combat, and it is just as brutal as you remember. Kratos is cutting down enemies in half with an axe. He's using a shield to bash enemies back. He's actually using some sort of elemental magic attack to drop some sort of lightning. There's a giant beast that's knocking over pillars with real-time destruction. And when he's killing these things, I'm talking about the blood is just shooting out, even though it's orange blood. And then you see one guy that just looks on and goes, "Wow, that was some kind of a fight," adding some sort of comedic tone to it. Who knows how long that character is going to be around. You see Kratos climbing along the cliffside with his son on his back, going past a waterfall. You see a woman, presumably Kratos' wife, saying that his son needs him to be there as a father. And then back on the boat, a Godzilla-sized snake, a serpent, rises from the water, and it spits Kratos' axe back at him. And the beast talks, the boy translates, and says that this serpent wants to help them. God of War, early 2018. Good trailer, all in all. I'm a fan of God of War. I was kind of skeptical to see exactly where this is going. It was a little disappointing to see that this was, more edited than last year. Last year we got just a nonstop vertical slice of gameplay. This year it was more of a standard trailer with cutscenes interspliced with gameplay, interspliced with different sections of the game. It still looks beautiful. I'm not going to take that away from it, but I guess it was building a story, and that was good enough. It was a good trailer. It got me pumped to check out this game, and I'm really happy to hear that's coming in early 2018. I wonder if Sony is just going to start positioning that as their time to release games. Early 2018, much like you saw earlier this year, where we had things like Neo, Nier Automata, Horizon Zero Dawn, that first quarter. that's not a bad idea if you think about it, because people are going to get their Sony consoles in the holiday season, and then it's like, well, we know you got all those gift cards. Why don't you buy some games? You got the brand new console. We're going to give you an excuse to use it. That's a pretty good idea, instead of just having, a cluster of the fall releases. And then you know how it is. Once you have 5 games at once, they all kind of fall by the wayside. Maybe 1 or 2 survive, but when you have so many options at once, you don't really connect with the software as much. So maybe Sony's trying to solve that. It's a smart idea. I think that's actually going to work. Next up, we have a trailer for Detroit Become Human, which of course is the game that's being developed by, I've already forgotten his name. I can't remember his name right now. That's so embarrassing. But he was the guy that did things like Heavy Rain, Fahrenheit, Beyond Two Souls. Wow. His name is just slipping my mind right now. That is embarrassing. It is kind of late, and I've been up for a very long time. But in this trailer, we see 2 robots working together. One is named Marcus. The other is named North. It's a guy and a girl. They're walking through this snowy, futuristic Detroit. They're both androids, but they have blue light in their temple, whereas all the other androids that are performing, manual labor have yellow light in their temple. This is important because Marcus has the ability to touch a robot, and he says, now you're awake. So with a single touch, he's basically hacking into their program and giving them self-consciousness, allowing them to decide their own future. And that's obviously not good for mankind, because they're building all these androids to, be their slaves, essentially. So North and Marcus see a storefront where there are a bunch of androids just waiting there with price tags above them. And they're disgusted by this, so they want to break in. But before they can, a drone spots them, and then the police are called in. And the girl says, what do we do? And Marcus decides they should run away. But then the game pauses and says, but things could have turned out differently. You could have distracted them by just going into a corner and start making out. So like, oh, never mind. It's just a couple over here. The stupid drone, or you could hide behind the bushes. They show what happens there. They hide in the bushes. Or perhaps you never got caught in the first place. Perhaps you would kill the drone, and then you would steal a truck, smash it into the storefront, and then free all of the androids. And then perhaps you would cause a giant riot in the streets, which would cause, a bunch of police to be sent in, and then androids are getting shot, which might turn you into some sort of war criminal. Well, not war criminal, but violent rebel group. Or you can go the pacifist route. This trailer was all about showing you the different options that you have. And if you've never played one of these games before, they are all about interactive stories. It's about replaying the games and seeing how you would have different outcomes. Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls are available on the PlayStation 4. I do recommend that you check out Heavy Rain. And I believe Fahrenheit is also available as a PlayStation 2 classic. Whatever that was called here in America. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, definitely check out Heavy Rain if you want to get a good look at what these games are. God, I can't remember the name of the creator. Don't put it in the comments. I don't want to know. I'm going to look it up afterwards. All you'll do is remind me that I forgot. Anyway, moving on. Shawn is back on stage. Oh no, before he gets back on stage, we saw a trailer for Destiny 2. It was more Destiny, but what they announced here is that they're going to have an exclusive strike, exclusive gear, exclusive ship, exclusive weapon, and exclusive player versus player map on the PlayStation 4 version of the game. So really rubbing it in that the best way to play is on the PlayStation 4, and arguably the PlayStation 4 Pro. So yes, Shawn is back on stage. He says, wow, breathe for a second. Look at all this stuff. And he says he's going to leave everyone with a true PlayStation exclusive. Cuts to New York City. We see SpiderMan. That's right, it's the SpiderMan preview. He's swinging past Fisk Building, which of course is owned by the Kingpin, whose name is Wilson Fisk. Spider-Man lands on the rooftop. His eyes are moving just like they will in the upcoming movie, just like they used to in the cartoon, so they've added that into the game. He swings through a construction site. He's talking to someone in a headset, and she's like, did you spot anybody yet? And he's like, let me see. He sees some patrolling guards, so he's taking them out one by one with stealth, always using his webbing. It was really dynamic, the way that he would spin them around and then glue them to the floor, or hit them with web and sort of use a pulley system to tie them up to the roof. to distract someone else. He actually threw a web mine. Someone tripped over it and it just shot web and pulled them into the wall, knocking them out cold. He's basically an acrobatic Batman, like the Arkham series. So when he's fighting these people with machine guns head on, he'll straight up jump towards them and then spin in the air, avoiding the machine gun fire. It looks awesome. And he's kicking them in the head. He shoots web at one guy and just pulls him to the floor, knocking him out cold. It looked brutal, but also beautiful. He picks up a phone, he answers it, it's Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, and he asks, who is the Demons leader? Apparently he's fighting after a group called the Demons, right? And he says, well, I'll tell you if my men survive. A helicopter goes past, Spider-Man's like, well, I gotta follow that. So he starts following after them, but he notices another worker is about to be shot to death. So he jumps in to rescue him by shooting a steel beam and causing it to rotate, knocking out all of the bad guys. Super cool. I'm not sure how many of these systems there are going to be in the actual game. You know what I mean? Because you'd have to learn those mechanics. Otherwise, it's going to feel like it's on the rails. But who can say? It's still a long ways away. Finally, he gets inside of the helicopter. There's a guy with a sword that's trying to kill him. He recognizes him. He's like, oh my God. So he has to start chasing after the helicopter. He takes one of those giant trailers that you see at construction sites and webs it to the helicopter to slow it down. But it doesn't. Instead, the helicopter is just trying to get away. All the while, this trailer is swinging back and forth. It's smashing signs. It's smashing billboards. It's chipping off parts of the skyscraper. All of this destruction is happening in real time. It is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Finally, it knocks over a crane, and Spider-Man has to go into a quick time event where he's quickly webbing parts of the crane to different parts of buildings before it finally stops in place. There's no way I can really do that scene justice. You have to look it up. It looked incredible. Finally, he catches up to the helicopter, and he actually creates a web that basically puts the helicopter in a big web, like a fly in a spider web. And then the trailer ends with the evil guy attacking Spider-Man. The guy with the sword. He's like, rah! And then it cuts away. But at the last second, it shows a very, very cool moment where somebody's taking photos and someone says, come on, Miles, let's get out of here, which of course is a nod to Miles Morales, who is the Ultimate Spider-Man, the comic book Ultimate Spider-Man. If you don't recognize that, he was the Black Spider-Man, for lack of a better word. That was the one that got all the news stories. He's really awesome, and so hopefully they really put him in this game and give him a decent storyline, because he's an awesome character, arguably more interesting than Ultimate Spider-Man. And that was it. That was the whole press conference right there. That was the whole Sony event. It was over. And, obviously the biggest thing there was Spider-Man, which is coming in 2018. When? They didn't give an exact date. Pretty disappointing. Well, besides that, it was a little bit lackluster. It was kind of like, oh, here's all these VR games that really don't need to be VR, but I guess they're trying to sell headsets. They've already sold over 1 million. Good on them for at least, supporting their accessory. That's really important. So this isn't like the PlayStation Vita where it exists, but they don't acknowledge it. Even if I didn't like what they were putting out, it was the right thing to do, to give the PlayStation VR headset its own time. I will give them credit there. God of War, once again, it was a good trailer. Looked awesome. All about that game. Marvel vs. Capcom getting a demo. Like, all right, I'll definitely check that out. Monster Hunter World coming to PlayStation 4. Super cool. But it was like, really? That's all you got? Don't you got that one thing? That one thing? And this is what I'm talking about. If you look back at previous years, they would have everything you already knew was coming. But they would include that one thing that would go, oh, I didn't see that happening. That blew me away. Oh my God. Well, it's not going to be out for years, but who cares? That was like the coolest thing at the entire conference. Sony didn't have that this year. And I don't know. On the one hand, I can't blame them, because how do you keep that up for 5 years? Because 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016 all had one of those major surprises. So this would be the 5th year. You can't do it every year. In fact, sometimes you need to have a sort of slacking year to get you even more hyped for the next year. And maybe they just don't have anything necessarily they can show. But at the same time, this is the fastest selling video game console of all time. It is breaking records every single month, every single year. Surely they have something in development to get my blood pumping, to show me something that's going to surprise me. I've never seen anything like that before. I can't believe they're remaking that game. I can't believe it's getting a sequel. This new IP from that studio. Whoa, that director is back to make this? They didn't do that. But I will also give them credit because they didn't push anything that won't be out before next E3, which is what I recommended. Everything is going to be out before June of 2018. That's what I said in my preview show. That's what they need to do. So they didn't talk about Death Stranding, and I say good on them. Like, let's leave that in the distance. They didn't talk about the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Cool. There's no reason to talk about that. They didn't talk about Shenmue 3 because that's been delayed into December of 2018. Understandable. But as a viewer, I walked away pretty disappointed. So, I guess everyone's wondering, how does this compare to Xbox? Well, I'm going to need a little bit more time to compare that, and we'll definitely talk about it on this week's episode of the Pressure Cast. So why don't we close up this episode right now? All in all, Sony, if I had to give you a grade, I guess it would be a B. It was a solid B. The games themselves were B+, the packaging was a B. I'm glad that you're supporting PlayStation VR. Good on ya, but I was kind of bored. And also, sort out your audio problems. Oh, and Days Gone looked fantastic. Incredibly excited for that. Maybe just for the graphics, if I'm being honest. But anyway, let's close up this episode of the Pressure Cast, the special episode of the Pressure Cast. We will be back tomorrow to talk about all the announcements at the Nintendo Direct, closing out our E3 coverage. I'm really looking forward to it. How are they going to take advantage of the momentum of the Switch? We will soon find out. But yes, that will do it for this one. I will see you guys tomorrow. I hope you're enjoying E3.